There was a time when I thought I had it figured out. I had the money, the freedom, the lifestyle most men only see on a screen. I was doing over $100,000 a month, 25 years old, and completely convinced that I had become someone. But success, you see, real success, has a way of holding up a mirror to you and making you look at everything you've been refusing to see. Because one day, it was all gone. Not slowly, all at once. The money, the business, the version of myself I thought I was. All because I had an identity wired for self-destruction. But the day that I lost everything, that was the day I met myself for the very first time. This is the story of how I built an empire, lost it all due to temptation, lust, ego, and an identity that was wired from the beginning for failure. And this is the story of how I burned that identity to the ground and built something the world cannot take from me, the best version of myself. So, let me take you back. I had built an online business, and from the ground up, from literally zero. And at a certain point, things really started working. Like I was making 50 grand a month, 60 grand a month. And in the top months, we were doing well over 6 figures in a month. Now, you think that that level of success would make a man feel complete, would make a man feel fulfilled, but that is not the truth. At least it wasn't the truth for me. Because here's what no one really tells you. If you haven't built the internal foundation to hold all of that success, it will show every single crack in your character. Even though I was financially very successful and I was ambitious and driven and I could be disciplined when I really chose to, I had a lot of cracks in my life as well, in my character as well. I woke up late. One of the things that I always did, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will recognize themselves in this, is I always waited to the last thing to do things. Up until the last moment to do things. This is a big thing for a lot of people, and it shows something about your character. But I went out in the weekends, I drank alcohol. Eventually it also turned into a lifestyle of partying and drugs and women and chasing. And I lived a lavish lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, right? But the fact that I made more money showed me all of the cracks in my character. I was spending money recklessly, money that I should have been reinvesting in the business or in myself. And I spent it on buying a nice car and traveling first class and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, right? Because I thought that was success. But the truth is that even though I thought I was very disciplined and, I had managed to build a successful business, I actually had zero discipline, or I had discipline in the wrong areas of my life. I was very disciplined in having fun. I was very disciplined in making sure that I wouldn't progress too far and that I would pull myself back to a level that I was familiar with. And eventually the business reflected exactly who I was on the inside, and everything collapsed. I remember standing on the terrace of my penthouse when everything just had completely gone tits up, and I had gone through a rigorous couple of months of trying to escape everything through parties, women, and drugs, and just the whole shebang, and just doing a lot of stupid shit, hoping that it would somehow solve all the problems that I had, which it obviously didn't. And that was the moment where I was standing on the terrace of my penthouse in Marbella. The realization came in that I had lost it all, and that I needed to do something different. And in that moment, there was only one thing that I could do, and that was face my shadow. And I don't mean this in like a metaphorical kind of way. I really mean it in a way as like, why am I the way that I am? Why am I this person? Why am I the guy that has this result at this right moment right now? And that whole question changed my life. Now, I want to introduce you to one of the most important psychological concepts that exists. And this is the one thing that changed my identity, that changed my behavior. Because it is the framework that I used to understand why I was self-sabotaging everything that I had built. Maybe you've heard of someone called Carl Jung. He's one of the greatest, I would call him more of a philosopher than that he is a scientist or a psychologist. But he's probably one of the greatest modern minds when it comes to identity change, understanding yourself, and I would highly recommend you Google about him and learn more about his work. But one of his most powerful works is the fact that he believed that every single person has a shadow. Every single man, every single woman, but in this case I'm mostly talking to men, has two sides to him. You have the persona. This is basically pretending. This is the person that you pretend to be, the polished version that is acceptable to society, that society accepts and deems as, a good person, basically. And then there is the part of you that is called the shadow. And the shadow is the part of you that has urges, that wants to escape, that's the part of you that you're ashamed of. And don't tell me that you don't have it. You have things about yourself that you don't really like. You've got your little vices and your little things that no one else sees but you. These are your addictions to comfort, watching porn, smoking, drugs, chasing women, your insecurities, validation needs. This is your shadow side, okay? So here is one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my journey of self-mastery and becoming more disciplined, and what a lot of men do wrong. A lot of guys think that they should suppress their shadow side with extreme discipline. But the problem with this is that when you do that and you suppress it, it only builds up underneath all of that suppression. And then when it breaks loose in ways that you don't want it to break loose, right? So this is why you see so many people that are disciplined for like 3 months, but then end up falling right back into the same old habits, the same old patterns that they used to. And I recognize this with myself as well. I had periods where I said, 3 months, lock in, the famous lock in. And then I would have 3 months of no alcohol, no parties, no drugs, and all that kind of stuff, even though I would still do other things, other vices, overeating, binge watching Netflix, that kind of stuff, But I wouldn't do the heavy stuff, basically. But that would be followed up with me going out on a 3-day bender after it was done, because I thought, this is a reward for the good behavior that I have. Now, that doesn't really make sense, right? That isn't really discipline. In fact, that is actually quite fucking crazy. To say that you're disciplined for 3 months to then fall right back into the old patterns that you were before you started with those 3 months, like nothing's really changed. You've just wasted a lot of potential, wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of energy trying to change something that was never changed in the first place. So the more that you ignore that side of yourself, the more powerful it grows. And one of my mentors, I had a call with him and he told me, imagine, when you were a kid and you had like a football or a ball filled with air, and you put it on the water in the pool, it splashes back up. That is what happens with this shadow self as well if you decide to suppress it without working on it, right? And a lot of men, they suppress it with extreme discipline, but eventually it always comes back in different ways that you don't want it to come back. This is why you see impulsive destruction, self-sabotage, it just comes back stronger than ever before. Destroyed relationships, destroyed business, drugs. I had a friend, for example, and he just always managed to get himself into so much trouble, and then he would kind of like get out of that trouble too, like his life was complete chaos all the time. Like everything around him was about chaos. His relationships, work, every single thing was about chaos. But he kind of managed to thrive in that as well, kind of managed to do that. But it would always cause so much issues, so much drama, so much problems. Like this doesn't give you the opportunity to grow. This doesn't give you the space to add new things into your life which are going to help you grow, right? The more that you try to suppress things, the more they will come back if you never learn to face them in the first place. Now, my shadow self was the version that wanted to go out, party, escape, take drugs, fuck women, do crazy shit, have fun, pretend to be cool, create amazing Instagram stories and reels just to show off. That was my shadow self, right? It chose the dopamine hit over discipline, and it chose comfort over growth. And I also tried to ignore it for a long time. I also tried to suppress it. I also tried to think that it wasn't something that, let me just grab a quick Coke. I kind of ignored it. I kind of thought like, this is nothing, and let me just, be more disciplined. But then one day it just completely took over, and it took everything from me. And that's when I realized is that you don't destroy your shadow by running from it, but you destroy it by facing it. And this is where discipline comes into play. This is where you start to change yourself. I want to give you the know-how, the nitty-gritty stuff, the neuroscience part about it, because that is important to understand, right? Because you can't just feel like you're disciplined without understanding why it exactly works. And I am all about rewiring identities. And in order to do that, you need to understand what's going on in your identity, right? Because discipline, in my opinion, isn't something that you just pretend to be. It is a result of who you are. So we don't become disciplined by trying to become more disciplined. We become disciplined by changing our identity and becoming a disciplined person, basically. Because anyone can be disciplined for a short amount of time, but you're fighting an uphill battle. You're fighting against an identity that doesn't believe it's disciplined. So you always fall back into the old patterns of not being disciplined. right? And that is why so many people just have this cycle of disciplined, crash, disciplined, crash, disciplined, crash. And it never ends. So your brain builds your sense of self through repeated behavior, thoughts, and responses, okay? So this is how I want you to see it. You are consistently, every single day, building proof that you are some kind of person, right? So you can build proof that you are the person that gives up. You're the proof that you are the person that is healthy. You can build proof that you're the person that is disciplined, right? Your brain logs all of these things. And every time, and this is where the hard part comes in, every time that you choose comfort over discipline, so anytime you choose instant gratification over delayed gratification, you basically tell yourself it is another piece of proof on the already undeniable mountain of proof that you are not the person that follows through, that you are the person that takes the easy road, that you are the person that breaks his promises. So your brain constantly deepens that identity. And then because you have that identity, you keep repeating the same behaviors. And because you keep repeating the same behaviors, that feeds the same identity, interpretation that is received by the brain, okay? So this is important to understand. So this is where we start looking at self-directed neuroplasticity, all right? This is something that I'm reading about a lot and it interests me massively. And I've done this over the course of the past 5 months and I'll show you exactly how. And it basically means that your brain has the ability to reshape its identity based on repeated, consistent, conscious choices. So this is the thing. If you want to change who you are, you have to change yourself at a neurological level. This is the only way. You have to change yourself from the inside out in order to create the life on the outside. And this is what no one wants to tell you because it doesn't sell. What sells is, here is my favorite habit stack. Here's how you really become disciplined, right? And act and put these routines to work in your day-to-day life. But it doesn't work like that. You have to change yourself from the inside out because you don't want to be someone that consistently has to put in so much effort to be disciplined. You just want it to be a result of who you are. So imagine this. Over the past 3.5 months, I have lost over 10 kilos of fat. I've gone on this insane journey of reshaping my entire identity, but also my entire physique. I wanted to just completely reinvent every aspect of my life when it comes to my thoughts, my behaviors, my physique, my mental well-being, every single aspect. Over the course of the past 3-4 months, I have been eating and living so extremely healthy, and it's been on a quite restrictive diet. I truly deep down underneath believe that I'm a healthy person, right? I take so many actions every single day that reflect that inner belief. I don't even think about going to McDonald's. I don't even think about buying a bag of chocolates. I don't even think about having sweets in the cabinet. Because it just simply doesn't align with who I am anymore. Now, does that mean that I don't have cravings? Obviously, I do. Like, I was just sipping on a little Coke Zero, right? Because I love sugar. I love chocolate. And every time I walk past a bakery and I see the chocolate cake there, I want to get that fucking chocolate cake. I'm a huge chocolate fan. But I have an identity that doesn't align with that behavior, and that identity is worth more for me. That value towards being that person, I value that more. So even though I have the urge, the self-control doesn't cost me a lot of effort to say no to that because it simply doesn't align with who I am anymore. While before that, I would very often say like, I can do that because I believe that I was already healthy because I was working out a lot, so I could take that, I could eat that. But I wasn't really the same person that I was now. Right? So this is an example of how you can reshape your identity based on conscious decisions consistently over time until it becomes your new normal. Like, I don't have to really put in that much effort to say no to these things. It doesn't really cost me that much effort to be a healthy person. Health is just simply a result of who I am now. So the hard part, and this is where discipline comes in, is that in order to do that, in order to change yourself on an identity level, you have to make decisions that are incongruent with your old identity. So you have to do the things that you've never done. You have to scare or basically reset the system by taking the exact opposite actions or doing the exact different things from the things that you've always done. You don't change your identity. You don't change the way that you are. You don't change your neurological pathways by simply writing down some goals and by motivation. No, it's by consistent, hard, incongruent behavior, opposite or incongruent with your old identity. So you have to do the things that your old self would never do. That is what you have to do. Because every time that you do something that your old identity would never do, it is like casting another vote for the new identity that you're building. Now, in order to make this work, because this is very important, this is where most people fuck up, is if you do not have a clear North Star, if you do not clearly have a vision of who you want to become, what the person is that you're building, you are going to fail, because it's not going to make sense for you why you have to go through all of that discomfort to become that person. Like, if you don't understand what your why is, why you're doing it, you're either running away from something or you're becoming something new, right? You have to have these two things very clear for yourself, because otherwise your mind is going to tell you, ask yourself, why are we doing this again? Why is this really that important? Oh, we've done it for 2-3 weeks. We can kind of easy off now. So if you do not have an end goal in mind, a vision of yourself in mind that you want to become, this is going to be a very hard process, because it's not an easy process, right? It is literally going against what you believe to be true and to believe who you are. But eventually, after having consistently done the thing against your old identity, there's enough votes for your brain basically to accept the new identity that you've built over the course of, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or 90 days. At a certain point, you will notice that you are no longer effectively doing it in a sense that you have to do it, but you're not consciously doing it anymore, but it's just simply a part of who you are, right? And that's how I did it too. So I'll show you exactly how I did it. But before we talk about my solution, the way that I did it, the way that I went through a process of killing the old and rewiring for the new, we have to talk about something very important. Because there is a reason why most people are stuck, why most people feel stuck in a loop. And that's why you probably watch this video, because you think that discipline is the answer to all of your questions. And let me tell you something about why most people never change, even if they do try to become very disciplined. The reason is because you're never still. Just look at what your day-to-day looks like. You wake up, the first thing that you do is you grab your phone, you go through notifications, and the moment that you have had your morning coffee, you've already seen 10, 15, or 20 different other people. You've already compared yourself. You've already seen what's going on the other side of the world. You've already heard all of the bad news and the good news, right? You've already liked 15 carousel posts. You've scrolled past more than 100 reels. You are completely and utterly distracted every single day, constantly grabbing the phone. And at night, and I used to do this too, right? Don't get me wrong. I used to do this too. And at night, we watch Netflix, right? We watch football. We go out for dinner, whatever it is, right? So we are just simply never still. And then we ask ourselves, why do we feel like shit? Why are we inconsistent? Why do we not feel good about ourselves? 99% of us are never still enough to hear the truth about ourselves. And if you want to change your character, if you want to change your identity, you have to be still. You have to listen to who you are. You have to understand the truth about who you are. That is just the way that it is. See, your shadow grows in the noise, and distraction is not relaxation. It's avoidance. Like, how many times do you find yourself picking up your phones, doing anything in order to avoid sitting there with your thoughts, with what you feel inside, right? We are constantly looking for that next thing so that we are not being confronted with who we really are, with the voice that deep down tells us what we really are supposed to do, with our insecurities, with our negative thought patterns, right? That is why we consistently seek out distractions and dopamine. But in order to become disciplined, in order to change yourself, you have to become self-aware. And self-aware is not something that you can be in a phase or in a state of distraction. So you have to take the time to really figure out who you are. You have to take the time to just put your phone away sometimes. Take a notebook, take a piece of paper, and just write down some of the things that come to mind. Write down some of the things that you feel. Write down some of the things that you want to become. Write down some of the things that you've been doing over these past couple months, There is something amazing that happens when things go silent. At first, it's agony, right? Because you don't know what to do, because your brain is immediately screaming for another distraction, another dopamine hit. But the moment that you go past that, which doesn't even take that long, like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, you will find that in that stillness comes a lot of creativity as well. And that's when you can really become self-aware and you really start to listen and learn more about yourself. And that is the first step into changing everything in your life. It's to become self-aware. It's to understand who you are, how you operate, what your thoughts are, how you talk to yourself. Because we cannot change something that we're not willing to see. But if you are truly ready to change yourself, then this is the 5-step process that I have used in order to change my identity, to kill my old self, to rewire and reconstruct every single aspect of my life, and to become the best version that I am, that I've ever been. Like, the most consistent, the most disciplined, most grounded in my masculine. I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I only want to prove shit to myself at this point, right? I used to have a lot of insecurities. I used to need external validation. And now I just want to create these cool videos. Now I just want to grow. I want to develop myself to the best of my capabilities and then share my knowledge and share the man that I am with the world, right? And there is something powerful in that. And discipline, again, is just a byproduct of who I am. And when I became this person, everything else in my life started to change as well. And everything in your life will change as well. The money, the relationships, everything that you want is just simply a byproduct. It's going to be a byproduct of who you are on the inside. If you have shitty relationships right now, that's because you are probably not someone who is able to hold good relationships, right? If you don't have a lot of money right now, then you are probably not very disciplined when it comes to making money or something. So these are the 5 steps that I used to take back control and become the most disciplined motherfucker that I've ever been. Step 1, become still and identify the shadow. This is perhaps the most important thing. So before you start wanting to become more disciplined, again, you have to understand, who are you? So I want you to take time, undistracted time. No music, no phones, no messages, just time with yourself. There is a couple of questions that I asked myself, and that is, listen, you have to fucking face your fears, right? So I asked myself, what is the thing that I'm running from? What is this uneasy feeling that I'm trying to avoid by going towards these distractions? What things am I secretly very ashamed of? I was very ashamed of going out in the weekends and spending money on drugs and going out on Friday night, coming back home on like Saturday at 11 a.m., sometimes even later, just feeling this guilt and shame, and then trying to kind of avoid it and neglect it. But then I would just have this guilt and shame for the next couple days in my gut. So I wrote down those things, and for you it can be something different, right? But you have to dive deep into those nitty-gritty things that you rather not really talk about. And eventually also just ask yourself, what patterns keep showing up in my life that I don't really want? So I wrote down, for example, even though I had all of this guilt and shame, I still found myself back there every single Friday or Saturday night doing the exact same thing. And sometimes it wouldn't be every week, sometimes there would be a pause, but eventually I would always find myself right back at that exact same place where all of that shame and guilt kind of originated from. So I wrote down those things, and I was like, once you kind of see it becomes a little bit absurd as well. And that's when you kind of distance yourself from those things, and it becomes easier to change it. So I want you to write all of these little things down. This is what is called the shadow work. Your shadow cannot survive the light of the awareness, right? So become so aware of who you are, what you do, because that is the only reason that discipline, that's the whole reason why we're here, and identity change is actually sustainable for the rest of your life. The reason why I'm telling you this is because this is exactly the thing that no one does this. This is the thing that people want to avoid doing because it's fucking uncomfortable, all right? Because it means owning up to the part of you that you don't really like. It's owning up to the part of you that you're ashamed of. But you have to fucking do this. If you don't do this, then you are not effectively going to change. Again, that part of you is going to linger in the background and it's going to wait for you to just give up with this act of being disciplined or being this new person. And then it's going to come out in ways that you do not want to. And then step 2 is just radical ownership. You have to own everything about you completely. I couldn't blame anyone else for the behaviors that I had. I couldn't blame anyone else for the fact that I hit rock bottom, I lost my business, I lost my Porsche, my penthouse, and all of my money. I couldn't blame anyone for that. And if I would have, then I would have been extremely weak, all right? So I had to take radical ownership of every single thing in my life, every single thing that I had done and every single result that I had had at this very moment, or at the very moment that I made that decision to write all of these things down. Most people, they blame their childhood. A lot of people blame their parents. A lot of people blame their parents for the misery that they experience right now in life. Yeah, I was raised like this. Oh, my mom left me. I was abused as a kid. I know terrible things happen. There's a famous quote of this, I think it's a French guy, I'm not sure, who says, freedom is what we do after what has been done to us. There are certain things in your life that you just simply cannot avoid. My mom passed away when I was 14 due to cancer. I played the victim for a very long time, right? Because I wasn't aware and mature enough to deal with those kind of things. And I did a lot of stupid shit. And I have blamed that event for a lot of things in my life. And it wasn't until I was older and more mature and I did, this work, for example, that I could understand that those things never, that even if those things had happened and it was terrible, I still had a choice to become someone because of that, right? So you can choose to play the victim or you can choose to be the hero. And it's the same thing with the hero and the villain both have the same backstory most of the time. You know, they're orphaned, something happened to their parents, their parents usually got killed. One person decides, I'm going to show the world how evil the world is by doing the exact same thing that has happened to me, and the other person is going to be like, the hero is going to be like, I'm making sure that that never happens to someone else. Same backstories, different interpretations. So the moment that you start owning up to all of your fucking bullshit, that is the moment that it starts to change, okay? That is the only time where you start to be able to shift, because that is when you have become aware, when you've taken the ownership. If you own the shadow, then you can own the story, and then you can own the solution. And a lot of these things with ownerships are about the stories that we tell ourselves about why we are the way that we are, okay? And your conscious mind is extremely good at creating a narrative for your misery. How many fat people do you see, for example, that tell you like, yeah, you know, but I grew up like this, and you know, healthy food is expensive. Okay, well, running isn't fucking expensive. Running is fucking free. So we make up elaborate stories to justify what the subconscious really thinks. All right, step 3 is design your identity and then act on it. Like I said, you cannot become disciplined if you do not know what you're becoming disciplined for, why you are becoming disciplined. Your subconscious, your brain needs a reason as to why, and that why needs to be very strong. That is why when you have a North Star vision and you really visualize the person that you want to become, that is probably the strongest thing that you can do, because you can run away from something, but if you do not know where you run to, then it's not really going to matter. No wind is favorable to the sailor that doesn't know where he's going. So design your identity and act on it. And this is where neuroscience also kicks in. You don't find your new identity, but you build it. You build it through decisions, okay? That is the most important thing. Decisions are the key to creating new neural pathways. So you have to be very, very, very specific with who you want to become. You can't just write down, I want to become successful. What does success mean for you? What does a successful day in your life look like? What would one day be that you could live any day of the year and still be happy and enjoy that day? So you have to figure out, who do I, like in detail, figure out who do you want to be? What time do you wake up? What does your day-to-day life look like? How much money are you making? What are you working on, right? Where do you live? How do you look? What is the first thing that you want to think of when you wake up in the morning? How does your routine at night look like, for example? How are you healthy? So the more specific you can become with these things, the more easy it is to make the decisions that lead you to that person. So once you've figured out who you want to become, you write all of these things down and you consistently read through that page. I have a page, I don't know where the book is, where it literally just says the ultimate Jesse, right? And there's a list of things that my ultimate version looks like. And then it's just aligning and acting every single day in accordance and in congruence with that new version that you've put on paper, because that version is out there, right? And you just craft it and sculpt it over time by taking the actions on a daily basis. So step 4, what really helped me is hard and daily non-negotiables, because it gives you a very tangible thing that you can hold on to. In the process of becoming someone new, in the process of becoming very disciplined, in the process of changing your identity, you can't measure progress based on how you feel, because feelings are going to fluctuate based on sleep, stress, comparison, things happen in life. Like you can't base it on how you feel. So you have to have non-negotiables in place that you just simply do every single day, regardless of how you feel, that when you do all of those things, you know at the end of the day, I've had a good day. You know at the end of the day, I have progressed forward because of those things. Start, for example, with doing one thing that your old identity would never do every single day. For some people, that could be waking up extremely early. That's what I did, for example. I'll tell you a bit more about my ritual, basically. I met another guy here at the Run Club past weekend who said that his challenge was to run 5K every single day for 100 days, and he'd never done that. It is definitely a challenge. There's going to be a lot of days where you think, fuck man, I don't want to fucking run. I don't want to do this. There's going to be a lot of days where you wake up at 4:30 or 4 a.m., you know, where you've only slept maybe 5-6 hours, where you're then like, I don't want to do this, man. I want to stay in bed. But that is exactly why you do it, because you have to take back control. So even though it is the most annoying thing for you to do. That is when you take back control and you force yourself to actually do it. And those non-negotiables, they form your daily anchor. This is just the one thing that you have to do every single fucking day for a set period of time. Because if you really want to know how discipline is formed, it is by doing that. It is by having this feeling, having this voice in your head, I don't want to fucking do it, but I'm doing it anyways. That is where discipline is forged, right? So you can start with one big thing that impacts your life massively. One of the things that I did was waking up very early, because in order to wake up very early, I woke up between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. I'll grant you that I woke up more often at 5 a.m. than at 4 a.m. But 5 a.m. was a big thing for me. I never woke up at 5 a.m. Like, earliest maybe 6 a.m., but I never woke up at 5 a.m. It also changed my routine at night, because I couldn't afford to go to bed at 11, right? Because then I just wouldn't have enough sleep. So I would have to go to bed at like 9 and 10 latest to get a good amount of sleep. So it changed my complete night routine as well. So it kind of forced me not to go out. It didn't give me the option to go out to drink in the weekends or spend time with friends until late at night and be drawn into that environment that would have pulled me back into old habits, for example. So every time that you close that gap, you become a different person at a neurological level, okay? And then step 5 is build internal validation and sever the need for external validation, which was one of my biggest fucking problems, external validation. Holy cows. I was an insecure little brat that needed a lot of external validation, I'll tell you that. But this was the most profound shift for me as well, right? Like, I realized that so much of my old self, the pleasure-seeking, validation-seeking, showing off, was based upon needing external validation, needing to be seen as someone worth. When approval came through money or women or some kind of win, that would give me a temporary relief, but that fades quickly, because you build a house on sand, The foundation isn't worth anything. And if your worth is always based on something external, then that becomes an issue, right? And the reason why this is important for discipline is because true discipline, true confidence comes from within, right? And it means that you have self-respect because of who you are, not of what you have. Like, I like being disciplined. I have a lot of self-respect because I'm disciplined, and that makes me not want to show off anymore to other people. Although it is always something that I have to check myself with, because it's easy to fall into that trap. The reason why this is part of the step is because once you create that internal validation, then discipline becomes, again, a byproduct of who you are, because self-respect is eventually why we do what we do. You want to become disciplined because you want to have self-respect. That is why you want to become disciplined. Another word for it is just basically internal validation, right? Internal validation and self-respect are the two same things. And that comes from making yourself proud in private when no one else is watching, right? I was very good at doing work when people were watching, but when no one was watching, I was a mess. And this is the problem with so many people. This is why external validation is something that you need to sever in order to become very disciplined, because you need to validate yourself in private instead of showing off in public. And that is eventually how you become someone that you respect. That is where true confidence, true grounded masculinity for men, that's where that really comes from, the relationship that you have with yourself, because you know who you are. You know what you've done when no one was watching. And that moment that you have that, you carry around a certain peace, a certain energy that everyone feels that. Everyone knows that you are someone that does those things, and you don't have to say it, right? And that is eventually, for a man, obviously a good place to be. One of the, when you talk to someone who is full of shit, you kind of have this feeling, right? But you can also see when someone is truly confident, you can just feel it, you can just see it, right? And that is eventually where you want to be. That's where you want to go to. And that is through discipline, through self-respect. My complete routine, what I did for 90 days, is I woke up at 5 a.m., or at least I woke up between 4 and 5 a.m., and I took a cold plunge at 5 a.m. every single day for 90 days straight. In the cold, I think it was 8 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure, I think it's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe less, I'm not sure. 8 degrees Celsius every single day in the cold, in the dark, when no one else was awake. The moment that I woke up, right, I had a cold plunge right outside of my bedroom in the backyard. Just, you wake up and you put your feet on the ground and you walk outside and you put on that damn machine and you get into the cold. It was one of the, there was no day in those 90 days where I felt like, oh nice, I felt like doing it. Like, every single day it was a fucking challenge. Every single day it was a fucking battle because I wanted to stay in bed. You know how many times I've thought to myself, you know what, today I'm feeling a little bit sick, maybe it's better not to do it, or you know, you have a very long day up ahead and you also are going to do this, so maybe today is not the best day to do it. Your brain will find the most amazing excuses not to do it. It is insane. And that is exactly what you're fighting against. And that is where discipline is born. Because the moment that I stepped into that cold plunge, the moment that I put my head on the water and I came out, I was like, yeah, fuck you. Because I was actively fighting this old version of myself. Every time that I went into the cold plunge, it was like a reminder of where I came from, who I was now, and who I was becoming. And that just changed something for me because every single day, I started the day by taking back control, by being in fucking charge, by leading myself to a higher version of myself. And in that process, the pleasure seeker died, the escape artist, as I like to call him, died, the needing external validation kind of Jesse died in that moment because that was like no one was watching. Even though I filmed all of it, it was this personal, private moment where I just did go to war with myself and wanted to absolutely smash that old version, right? And kill all the things that were sabotaging my success, that were holding me down. So, and from that, after 90 days, you gain so much self-respect by doing something that is extremely hard, by putting yourself through such a challenge. You build so much discipline upon that. And this is what I call the discipline river, is when you start being disciplined in one area of your life, it becomes so much easier to become disciplined in other areas as well, because it just kind of doesn't make sense, right? Why would you be super disciplined in the mornings, do that crazy hard thing, and then fuck up with something else later on in the day? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's very hard for your brain to kind of do that because your conscious is going to be like, well, like, why would we do this, you know? You're going to feel very guilty and very ashamed with doing that behavior. And sure, you might get relapses in that period, which is totally fine, which happens, but you'll feel different about those relapses too. It's like the guy who was running 5K. Like, if you run 5K every day as a challenge, but then, you know, at night you eat burgers and pizza every single night, then you know on a deeper level that you're not doing anything. Like, you know on a deeper level that you're just doing that in order to kind of justify other bad behavior, right? So when you become very disciplined in one area, it just becomes easier to become disciplined in other areas. It becomes easier to go to bed earlier. It becomes easier to, you know, be more nutritious. So slowly but surely, you will find yourself becoming more disciplined in all these little areas, and you'll transform into this other person. That is what happens. And then the more of these tiny little actions that you take every single time, the more that identity starts to be confirmed in your mind, in your subconscious. Like, this is now who I am. This is now who I am. So you got to find your heart. You got to find your challenge. You got to find the thing that your old identity would never do, and you have to do that consistently. I would suggest you do it for at least 90 days, and it will change your fucking life, man. It will change your entire fucking life. So let me leave you with this. You already know that your shadow exists. You felt it. It's the version of you, the part of you that wants to quit, that wants to escape, that wants to choose comfort over pleasure, comfort over growth, that chooses pleasure over purpose, right? Makes excuses for not doing the thing that he knows he should be doing. It's also the version of you that sabotages everything that you built. And up until this point, you've been coexisting with it. You've been managing it. You've been running away from it when it became too strong. But you cannot build the best version of yourself while the old version is still running the show. You have to kill it. That is the only option. Not just by fighting it with willpower, because willpower eventually fades away. Willpower is it's a fugazi, right? You replace it with daily actions, with non-negotiables, with things that you can tangibly see, hold, and experience on a day-to-day basis. These are the things that your old self would never take. And the funny thing is that I don't even think that you become someone new. It's not even about that. I see this process more as you removing the layer of shadow that is over the person that you deep down already know you can be, because there is a grounded, masculine, consistent, disciplined motherfucker down there. I know there is. There was one in me, and I always felt that guy too. But the shadow version of me, the weakest part of me, the weak, pathetic version that needed external validation, I let that guy take control way too long over my life. But underneath all of that was also this very capable, strong, grounded, calm, peaceful man that you kind of have to let rise when you lift off the shadow of yourself, right? So It's not necessarily about becoming someone new, but it's more about removing the layers that don't serve you to find out that what you were looking for was already there in the first place. But you have to go through the system to really get there. And you know what I think? I think that the world really needs that man, because the world didn't need another old Jesse, but it definitely needed the guy that I am now. And I know that you can do that too. So go become him. And I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.